The first shot wasn't the loudest sound that night. It was the silence that followed. Tom Reece had seen death before, but never like this. A city on the brink, a government hiding secrets darker than war itself, and a man with nothing left to lose. When betrayal wears the mask of justice, who do you trust? Because in this mission, the enemy isn't just out there, he's inside the system. And by the time Reece pulls the trigger, it's already too late to turn back. This is Cry Havoc, a Jack Carr thriller that will leave your heart pounding and your mind racing. Hello everyone, hi all, and welcome to Book Podcast Zone. We have quite a dossier in front of us today. It outlines this incredibly complex narrative, all centered around Cold War espionage.
Yeah, it's a story that really pulls you across the globe, doesn't it? From these, freezing cold seas near North Korea all the way to the absolute chaos and heat of the Vietnam jungles. And it's all set in that pressure cooker year, 1968.
Exactly, 1968. What a year. So our mission today, essentially, is to do a deep dive into the very structure of this story, this arc of betrayal.
Right. We want to unpack how the narrative uses real historical flashpoints. Things like the Tet Offensive, the Pueblo incident we just heard alluded to, the political turmoil back in the States.
Right.
How these aren't just background noise.
No, they're active ingredients.
Yeah.
They fuel the plot, deepen the sense of dread, the feeling of treachery closing in on our main character.
Precisely. Think of this as maybe the fastest way to get under the hood of this story, to see how it blends actual history with gripping fiction to create something really compelling. It's about understanding the why behind the suspense.
Okay, let's get into it then. We've got this narrative laid out chapter by chapter, which is honestly a perfect roadmap for us. It lets us see step by step how these huge global tensions crash into very personal motivations, personal agendas.
And how that intersection becomes, well, deadly. We're not just recapping a plot here. We're looking at the mechanics. How does it build suspense? How does it use history to make you feel the stakes?
So the story kicks off, interestingly, not in Vietnam, which you might expect given the 1968 setting, but far away, on the water, establishing the broader Cold War context first.
Yeah, setting that global stage, the environment of constant simmering conflict.
Chapter 1, right out of the gate, throws us into this intense crisis. It starts as a routine intelligence mission off the coast of North Korea. Sounds almost mundane, right?
As routine as shadowing North Korea can be, I suppose. But yeah, the idea is routine.
And then it just explodes. Suddenly, they're encircled by hostile ships. You get the sense of rising panic on deck, people scrambling, warning shots are fired. And then the sound. Screaming MiGs diving in.
It's a very sharp, very violent pivot from that, operational calm or perceived calm of being in international waters to just sheer adrenaline-fueled panic. That sudden shift is key. It sets the tone immediately.
Absolutely. The narrative immediately establishes this core idea. The illusion of safety in international waters just evaporates. It shatters instantly.
And what makes this opening so powerful, so effective, is the historical anchor. The source material is explicit. This whole sequence is inspired by the real USS Pueblo incident.
Right. And for anyone listening who knows their Cold War history, the Pueblo incident, that resonates deeply. January 1968.
Huge incident. It wasn't just a ship being captured. It was a massive intelligence loss for the U.S. Classified materials, crypto gear, gone. And the crew, 83 men, held captive by North Korea for nearly a year. 11 months.
It was a profound national humiliation. And the timing you mentioned earlier, just days before the Tet Offensive really erupted in Vietnam, it set this tone of American vulnerability, of being caught off guard right at the beginning of what became arguably the war's most pivotal year.
Exactly right. The Pueblo showed the world, and maybe more importantly, showed America itself, how the fate of just one ship, this lightly armed intelligence vessel operating alone, could push the U.S. towards a major conflict. Johnson was under immense pressure to retaliate forcefully.
But they couldn't, really, without risking a wider war on the Korean Peninsula, right when Vietnam was demanding all the attention and resources.
Precisely. It perfectly captured that pervasive tension of the era, that understanding that any small spark, any single aggressive act against what seemed like a soft target, could ignite a global firestorm. It establishes this world where even routine operations carry maximum geopolitical danger.
And crucially, as you said, where the U.S. could be dealt a major blow, be deeply embarrassed on the world stage without a conventional battle even taking place. It's about vulnerability.
That atmosphere is critical. It's immediate. It's overwhelming. This isn't a theoretical Cold War. It's immediate, palpable danger from page one.
So if the external situation is that precarious, that fragile, The next logical question is, how is the enemy exploiting this? Is this chaos being leveraged?
And that's where the narrative structure is, frankly, quite brilliant. It doesn't just stay with the ship crisis. Chapter 2 immediately pivots. It takes us behind the Iron Curtain into the heart of the KGB in Moscow.
Ah, okay, so we see the other side reacting.
More than reacting, we see them acting. There's this shadowy figure, a KGB strategist, who isn't just watching the chaos unfold. He's actively exploiting perceived weaknesses deep within the U.S. intelligence system itself.
So the Pueblo-like incident isn't the main event, it's almost cover, or an opportunity.
It could be both. The chaos creates distraction, creates vulnerabilities. This structural shift tells the listener the immediate danger, the MiGs and patrol boats, that's bad. But the real insidious threat, that's being orchestrated quietly, methodically, in the background, exploiting the system from the inside.
And this is where that deep sense of impending doom, essential for a good thriller, really starts to build. Because the narrative introduces this turning point. A high-ranking U.S. official, someone inside the system.
Right, and this official, maybe they're compromised, maybe they're an ideologue, maybe it's blackmail, maybe greed. The why might not even be clear yet. But the what is devastating. They are unwittingly, or perhaps wittingly, feeding crucial information to this KGB schemer.
So we shift from an external military crisis, the ship, to an internal crisis of loyalty, of trust.
That's the core theme emerging here. Trust, or rather the manipulation of trust. Vulnerability, whether it's personal or systemic, becomes the adversary's most potent weapon. It's how they get inside the wire without firing a shot.
And the narrative makes this feel very grounded, very real for the time. It's not just generic spy stuff. The sources specifically mention connecting this to NSA leaks and similar security breaches that were actually happening or feared to be happening during that era.
Exactly. Think about the real-world context. The Walker spy ring came later, but the anxieties were there. Concerns about moles, about penetrations at the highest levels. These were very real fears within the intelligence community. The potential for someone inside the National Security Agency or similar high-clearance bodies to betray secrets was a constant nightmare.
Because a leak from that level, it doesn't just compromise one operation. It can compromise sources, methods, entire networks. It goes right to the heart of your ability to operate securely.
And it underscores a crucial point about the Cold War. These superpower rivalries weren't just fought with missiles and tanks. They were often fueled by exploiting human weakness, ambition, debt, ideology, resentment, finding that crack in the opponent's system, that vulnerable individual that could be more effective than a division of troops.
It takes the whole us versus them dynamic and twists it, doesn't it? Suddenly, the most dangerous them might actually be one of us.
That's precisely the unsettling realization the narrative forces on you early on. You have these two parallel crises unfolding simultaneously. There's the visible external threat, the ship capture, the international incident playing out in headlines.
The public drama.
Right. And then hidden beneath that, there's the invisible, insidious threat, the treachery working its way through the system, unseen, unheard.
And for someone like our protagonist, who we know is heading into the field, that internal threat is terrifying. It means the very structure you rely on for support, for intelligence, for your survival, might be fundamentally compromised, rotten from the inside, maybe even from the top.
It raises the stakes exponentially. How can you operate effectively? How can you trust your orders, your intel, even your backup, if you suspect the system itself is leaking like a sieve, or worse, actively working against you?
An impossible position. Which, of course, leads us directly to the man who's about to be dropped right into the middle of this mess.
Exactly. So, having established this global backdrop, high risk everywhere, betrayal lurking within the system, and the narrative now zooms in, we meet the central character, Tom Reece, and we see how he gets entangled in this web spun between Washington, Moscow, and now Vietnam.
Right, how he becomes the focal point where all these threads converge. So we jump location dramatically, from the cold oceans and shadowy Kremlin offices to the intense heat and humidity of Vietnam 1968. We meet Tom Reece, described as a young Navy SEAL.
And right away, he's defined by more than just his rank or skills. There's this raw determination, almost a fierceness about him. But also, crucially, he's carrying the weight of what the sources call unspoken family legacies.
Okay, so he's not just a blank slate soldier. He has baggage, history. That adds depth immediately. What does this legacy entail, do we know? Or is it kept vague?
The outline suggests it's unspoken, so maybe it's more of a felt pressure than a detailed backstory initially. Perhaps a father or relative with a distinguished or maybe complicated military past. It creates an internal drive, maybe a need to prove himself or live up to something, or perhaps even escape a shadow.
Interesting. And his assignment takes him somewhere specific, somewhere notorious.
Yes, his professional and emotional turning point comes when he joins MACV-SOG, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group.
SOG, even the name sounds innocuous, like researchers or something. Studies and Observations Group.
Deceptively bland, wasn't it? But SOG was anything but bland. This assignment immediately ramps up the tension because SOG was the tip of the spear for the most secret, most sensitive, most deniable operations in the entire Southeast Asian theater.
So Reece isn't just joining the war, he's joining the secret war.
Precisely. And that puts him in this incredibly precarious balance. He has his inherent sense of duty, patriotism, the reasons he joined up. But now he's in an environment where the rules are different, the risks are exponentially higher, and personal survival becomes this constant gnawing instinct battling against the mission objectives.
To really understand what Reece is stepping into, we need to unpack SOG a bit more based on the historical context provided. These were real covert ops in 1968. What did that actually involve?
It involved highly classified, extremely dangerous missions. Small teams, usually Green Berets, SEALs, Air Force commandos, often working with indigenous personnel, running cross-border operations, deep reconnaissance patrols, prisoner snatches, wiretaps, sabotage, direct action missions, primarily into Laos and Cambodia.
Places the U.S. wasn't officially supposed to be operating militarily. Neutral territory, theoretically.
Exactly. That's the secret war across borders. These guys were operating where officially they did not exist. They were ghosts. Unsung heroes, the source calls them, because their successes and often their losses couldn't be acknowledged publicly.
Which brings us to that concept of deniability. What did that mean practically for someone like Reece on the ground?
Deniability was everything. It meant if your small team got into trouble across the border, there might be no official rescue attempt, or it might be severely delayed or limited, because admitting you were there could cause a massive international incident. If you were captured, well, the official line might be that you were never there. You didn't exist. The government would disavow any knowledge.
Wow. So you're completely on your own, essentially. Your lifeline isn't the full might of the U.S. military, it's the guys right next to you.
That's the absolute core of it, and why the narrative emphasizes this idea. Brotherhood forms in the fire of shared peril. For Reece and his SOG teammates, trust in each other isn't just important, it's the only thing they can truly rely on for survival when they're deep in enemy territory, operating outside the wire beyond official help. The institution might sacrifice them for the bigger picture, but the guy next to him won't. That bond becomes paramount.
Okay, so Reece is now inside this high-stakes, high-secrecy world of SOG. And the narrative introduces a specific kind of suspense early on. It's not just about facing the Viet Cong or the NVA.
No, it's something more unsettling. Reece starts grappling with reports, maybe rumors at first, then confirmed losses, of elite SOG recon teams vanishing. Not just getting hit in an ambush, but disappearing without a trace in these forbidden territories.
Vanishing. Like completely. Yeah. No radio calls, no bodies, no wreckage if air assets were involved.
Exactly. Teams going dark and never being heard from again, leaving behind only questions, uncertainty. Reece finds himself dealing with the psychological weight of these ghosts of lost comrades, men highly skilled, operating deep, who just blink out of existence.
That's got to be incredibly unnerving, more than just the standard risks of combat.
It leads Reece to this gut-wrenching realization. Maybe it's not just bad luck or superior enemy tactics. Maybe there's something else at play, a more sinister element, something beyond the known enemy, lurking in the shadows and picking off these deniable teams.
Which connects directly to the cost of SOG's operational model, right? This invisibility in warfare.
Absolutely. The key idea here is the profound, heavy cost of that secrecy. Operating with near total invisibility protects the mission, protects the political situation back home, but it takes a terrible toll. It erodes the soul, as the source puts it. How do you process loss when the lost man officially wasn't even there? How do you seek answers when the mission itself is predicated on silence?
You can't hold a memorial service for a ghost. You can't demand an investigation into something that officially never happened.
Precisely. And the narrative explicitly draws from historical accounts of missing SOG teams in Laos and Cambodia. This wasn't just fictional drama, it was a brutal reality. Teams did disappear. Men were lost, listed as MIA, often with little hope of recovery or even confirmation of their fate because of the classified nature of their operations. They became the ultimate silent sacrifices of this secret war.
And that silence, that lack of closure, must breed suspicion. Paranoia even. If teams are vanishing cleanly, maybe someone is helping them vanish.
That's the seed of doubt planted in Reese's mind. It turns his mission from just fighting the enemy to something else. He can't accept these disappearances at face value. His nature, maybe that family legacy thing pushing him, forces him to dig deeper. He starts looking for patterns, for anomalies.
Which, in an organization built on secrecy and need to know, probably makes him a problem. Someone asking uncomfortable questions.
A huge potential liability, especially if someone higher up wants those disappearances to remain unexplained mysteries. Reese's innate drive makes him dangerous to the conspiracy, even if he doesn't know it yet.
So while Reece is down in the jungle, wrestling with these missing teams and the ghosts of his comrades, the narrative cleverly cuts back. It reminds us of the bigger picture, the source of the potential betrayal.
Yeah, it keeps that parallel track going. We're reintroduced to, or maybe get a deeper look at, that Soviet schemer we met back in Chapter 2. This ambitious KGB advisor. He's not just reacting, he has a bold vision.
A vision for what?
Yeah.
Just disrupting U.S. operations.
It seems bigger than that. The goal isn't just tactical disruption, it's strategic. He wants to reshape the geopolitical map, leverage the Vietnam conflict and the chaos of 1968 to fundamentally shift balance of power in Southeast Asia, maybe even globally. And he plans to do it through cunning, through manipulation, not necessarily direct confrontation.
Okay, so he's the architect of the larger threat.
He appears to be. And we see his plan activate. There's this pivotal moment where his scheme kicks into high gear, demonstrating this chilling mix of cold calculation with high-stakes risk. He's playing a long game, manipulating events from afar.
The key idea being that these major power shifts, these big geopolitical moves, aren't always announced with trumpet fanfares. They happen through unseen manipulations, exploiting weaknesses, pulling strings behind the scenes.
And again, the narrative roots this firmly in the context of 1968. That year was absolute turmoil in the United States. You had the Tet Offensive shaking public confidence, the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy causing immense trauma and unrest, riots in major cities, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago descending into chaos. America felt like it was tearing itself apart.
Which, from the Soviet perspective, must have looked like a golden opportunity.
Exactly. The sources specifically mentioned this character echoing Soviet influence in Southeast Asia amid U.S. domestic chaos. The Soviets could see that the U.S. was deeply fractured, politically polarized, and increasingly weary of the Vietnam War. This internal weakness created a strategic opening.
They could push their agenda arming North Vietnam, expanding their influence in the region with less fire of a unified, decisive American response because America was too busy fighting itself at home.
That's the strategic logic. This KGB schemer isn't just a generic bad guy. He embodies that historical reality. He represents the external adversary capitalizing on the internal vulnerabilities of the United States during one of its most difficult years. It makes the threat feel incredibly plausible, historically resonant. He's not just fighting Reece, he's exploiting a nation in crisis.
Okay, so we have Reece in the jungle, suspecting something's deeply wrong with these vanished teams. We have the Soviet mastermind pulling strings from afar, exploiting U.S. chaos. Now, Chapter 6 brings these threads together in a direct confrontation for Reece, internally at least.
Right. This is where Reece's personal mission collides head-on with his official duties. He receives new orders, a new mission briefing, but these orders are described as layered.
Layered, meaning complex or deceptive.
Probably both. Complex on the surface, perhaps, but with hidden implications or objectives that maybe don't quite add up, especially given Reece's growing suspicions. This creates an immediate, agonizing conflict point for him.
The conflict between being the good soldier, following orders without question.
Exactly, the path of the obedient soldier, versus his own driving need, his personal quest for truth about the missing SOG teams, the path of the seeker. He's being told to focus on Mission A, while his gut, his intellect, everything is screaming that the real answers lie in understanding Mission B, the hidden one concerning his lost comrades.
That internal conflict must be intense. Sitting in a briefing room, needing to look focused, attentive, while your mind is racing, trying to read between the lines, looking for clues that confirm your suspicions.
That's the emotional core described here, the quiet internal doubts bubbling beneath the surface during the formal tension of the briefing. Can he trust these orders? Are they designed to genuinely achieve a military objective, or are they designed to distract him, maybe even lead him into a trap, silence him because he's asking too many questions?
So the necessity of this dual mission becomes undeniable for him. He has to appear to be the loyal soldier executing the mission he's given,
while secretly using that official mission as cover to pursue his own investigation to seek the truth. The line between following orders and pursuing his own agenda becomes incredibly blurred, dangerously so.
But isn't that incredibly risky? If his superiors suspect he's not fully committed to the briefed mission, or that he's poking around where he shouldn't be.
Hugely risky, but maybe necessary from his perspective, and perhaps his SOG training provides a degree of cover. These guys were expected to be independent thinkers, adaptable, operating with minimal oversight. Maybe that gives him a little latitude.
That makes sense. It reflects what the sources call the real ambiguities faced by SOG operators. They were often caught in this fog of Vietnam's multi-front war, dealing with unclear intel, complex command structures, sometimes conflicting priorities between different agencies, CIA, military, etc.
Right. The operational environment itself was inherently ambiguous. So Reese's personal quests, while dangerous, might not immediately stand out as completely rogue. At least not at first. He has to walk this tightrope, using the official mission as camouflage for his hunt for the truth. He's become a seeker wearing a soldier's uniform.
And that sets the stage for him going back out into the field, armed with new orders, but also burdened by these suspicions and his hidden agenda. He's heading back into the fire, but now the nature of the threat feels fundamentally different. Okay, so Reece has his layered orders, his hidden request. Now the narrative throws him back into the crucible. This is where the strategic maneuvering and internal conflict translate into brutal physical reality.
Exactly. We move from the tension of the briefing room to the visceral danger of the jungle. This section is about action, loss, and ultimately the devastating confirmation of betrayal. Reece and his SOG team are deployed deep into hostile territory, and the location chosen is significant: the A Shaw Valley.
The A Show. Even the name has a certain notoriety in Vietnam War history.
It absolutely does. This wasn't just some random patch of jungle. The A Shaw Valley, especially in 1968, was a major logistical hub for the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. It was a key infiltration route along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, heavily defended, heavily fortified, a very, very dangerous place to operate.
So dropping Reece's team in there immediately signals high risk. The narrative isn't just using a generic jungle setting, it's using a historically significant Viet Cong stronghold, adding this layer of brutal realism.
Precisely. And the team faces not just enemy contact, but the environment itself. The source mentioned the treacherous valleys, the sheer physical hardship, nature's wrath, torrential rain, mud, leeches, oppressive heat, alongside the constant threat of ambushes.
It's a meat grinder. And within this environment, the turning point comes.
Yeah.
An intense firefight erupts.
Yeah, a sudden violent skirmish that serves as a brutal, immediate test of those unbreakable bonds we talked about earlier. The brotherhood forged in shared perils, now tested under extreme fire.
In a place like the A Shao, where survival depends entirely on the man next to you, the narrative drives home this key idea. Survival inherently demands sacrifice. Whether it's covering your buddy's retreat, exposing yourself to draw fire, making those split-second decisions where someone has to take the risk.
That's the reality of small unit combat in that terrain. Trust isn't abstract. It's demonstrated through action, often at immense personal cost. This physical ordeal, this shared trial by fire, is essential. It strips away everything but that primal reliance on each other. It cements the brotherhood, which is crucial groundwork.
For making the eventual betrayal, when it comes, feel even more shattering. If these bonds forged in hellfire can be broken by treachery, then nothing is sacred.
Exactly. The A Shaw sequence isn't just action, it's about establishing the depth of loyalty that is about to be violated.
Following the skirmish, Chapter 8 seems to escalate things dramatically.
Yeah.
This sounds like the big action set piece.
It reads like pure chaos unleashed, a blistering jungle trap. Think overwhelming enemy fire, maybe mortars, grenades, the terrifying sound of rotors as helicopter support tries to intervene but perhaps gets hit itself. It's described as shattering any remaining illusions of control.
Even for highly trained SOG operators, the battlefield can just dissolve into madness.
That's the point. These guys are elite, yes, but war, especially guerrilla warfare in the jungle, is inherently unpredictable. Ambushes can spring from nowhere, overwhelming even the best defenses through sheer surprise and firepower.
And the emotional impact of this chaos is devastating. The sources say sudden raw losses occur here, fueling Reece's vengeful resolve.
Right. When planning goes out the window, when training only gets you so far and you see comrades fall, what's left is often this raw, burning desire for payback, for retribution. It's a primal response to overwhelming violence and loss. The key idea highlighted is that war's sheer unpredictability forges unbreakable will, or perhaps a will focused solely on vengeance.
This sequence, again, feels grounded in history. It's explicitly inspired by documented SOG ambushes, and placed within the context of 1968's escalating Tet Offensive prelude.
That timing is critical. Remember, the Tet Offensive began in late January '68. While the main offensive might have subsided in some areas by later in the year, the fighting remained incredibly intense. The North Vietnamese were still capable of mounting large, sophisticated attacks and ambushes. Placing this event during that period of heightened intensity makes the scale and ferocity of the ambush feel completely plausible.
It's not just a random firefight. It reflects the brutal reality of the war at its peak intensity. The feeling that the enemy could be anywhere and could strike with overwhelming force was very real for SOG teams. This scene captures that adrenaline, that fear, that escalation.
After the fury of the ambush, the narrative shifts focus slightly. Reece survives, but the mission changes. He's tasked with escorting a captive.
A prisoner taken during the fighting, presumably.
Seems likely. And this task forces a different kind of confrontation for Reece. Away from the immediate heat of battle, he's now dealing with the direct human toll of conflict, face to face with an enemy who is now just a prisoner, maybe wounded, vulnerable. It forces a kind of moral reckoning.
But it's not just about the prisoner, is it? This moment is amplified by something else.
Right. The sources state this transport phase is where a devastating betrayal manifests. Something happens during this seemingly more controlled situation that reveals a deeper treachery at play.
Okay, so the danger isn't over just because the main firefight ended. The betrayal hits after the battle.
It seems so, which makes it even more insidious. And this betrayal leads to a pivotal moment of grief. Loss strikes Reece incredibly hard here. And crucially, it's not perceived as just a random casualty of war this time. It feels like a direct result of deliberate, malicious action connected to the treachery he suspected.
So this loss confirms his worst fears. It's the proof he was perhaps dreading but also seeking.
Exactly. It fundamentally reshapes his path. His motivation clarifies, sharpens. It's no longer just suspicion, it's knowledge, paid for in blood. His personal quest for truth and justice now completely eclipses his duty as a soldier following orders.
This whole scenario taps into the real POW dilemmas in Vietnam, as the outline notes. Handling prisoners, especially in covert ops, was fraught with ethical and practical challenges. What do you do with a captive deep in enemy territory? How does it impact your own security?
Those were real, complex moral quagmires. The narrative uses that inherent ambiguity, that difficult situation, as the setting for this betrayal, maximizing the impact on Reece. The loss isn't just grief. The source calls it the catalyst that ignites a fire for justice. It confirms the enemy isn't just the VC or NVA, it's someone within his own side.
It isolates him completely, doesn't it? If the betrayal is real, who can he possibly trust now? His teammates might be loyal, but the system orchestrating the missions, it's compromised.
He's truly alone now, operating not just outside the wire, but outside the trust structure of his own command. He's moved beyond following orders. He's driven purely by the need to expose the truth and avenge the loss. And so we reach the culmination of Reece's quest in this part of the narrative. The final twist doesn't come during another battle, but through deduction, through piecing things together.
He connects the dots.
Precisely. He manages to assemble the puzzle pieces, revealing this complex web of treachery. And it's vast. It spans from the mud and blood of the jungle battlefields all the way back to the corridors of power, presumably in Washington or Saigon.
So the betrayal isn't localized, it's systemic, reaching the highest levels.
That seems to be the shocking reveal. The deception is finally laid bare, forcing this painful twist of loyalties. Reece realizes that the sacrifices made, the teams lost, weren't just tragic accidents of war. They were potentially calculated losses, orchestrated or allowed by someone high up for strategic gain, perhaps tied to that Soviet schemer's plans.
That's a devastating realization. The key idea being that the ultimate truth finally emerges from the ashes of trust. But finding that truth offers no comfort, only a colder, harsher reality.
And the narrative powerfully anchors this climax in the broader historical context of 1968. That year, as we discussed, was rife with political scandals, assassinations, and riots back in the U.S. There was a pervasive sense that institutions were failing, that trust in government and leadership was eroding rapidly.
So Reece's personal discovery of betrayal mirrors a larger national crisis of confidence.
Exactly. The feeling that the system itself might be corrupt or incompetent or acting against the interests of the people it was supposed to serve. That was in the air in 1968. Think about the credibility gap over Vietnam, the political polarization, the social unrest. By having Reece uncovered this high-level internal treachery, the narrative taps directly into that specific historical anxiety.
It makes his fictional discovery feel emotionally true to the period. The enemy within wasn't just a thriller trope, it felt like a real possibility to many people living through that year. The system felt broken.
Absolutely. Reece's lonely quest and horrifying discovery become a microcosm of that larger societal disillusionment. Hashtag tag outro. So, if we step back and look at the whole arc we've traced, from the Pueblo Lake incident through Reece's SOG experiences, the vanishing teams, the Soviet plotting, the final betrayal, what we see is a really sophisticated narrative structure.
It's not just a sequence of events, it's an argument, really.
It is. It's exploring how that specific historical instability of 1968, the Tet Offensive changing the war's perception, the Pueblo highlighting vulnerability, the political chaos back home, how all that didn't just create external enemies, it created the perfect environment, the perfect cover for enemies operating within the system.
The chaos became camouflage for treachery.
Precisely. The noise of the overt crises allowed the covert manipulations to proceed undetected, exploiting the West's, particularly America's, internal divisions and distractions.
So thinking about this for you, the listener, what's this big takeaway? It's seeing how a narrative like Cry Havoc, grounded in this specific historical moment, uses actual events not just as setting, but as integral parts of the plot engine. They drive the characters' motivations, shape the strategic landscape, and fuel the emotional core of the story, that feeling of pervasive danger and potential betrayal.
It's a powerful reminder, too, that in the world of espionage, in the realities of asymmetric warfare and political maneuvering, the greatest threats often don't announce themselves. They aren't always the tanks rolling across the border or the bombers overhead.
Sometimes they're the quiet decisions made in secure rooms, the compromises whispered in corridors of power, the manipulation of trust by people you're supposed to rely on. The enemy isn't just out there. Sometimes, the narrative argues, he's right here, inside the system.
Which leaves us, and leaves the character of Reece, wrestling with a really difficult question. When you discover that the price of knowledge, the price of uncovering the truth, is measured in the lives of your comrades, in the shattering of your faith in the institutions you serve, how do you reconcile that?
How do you balance your duty to the mission, as given, with what feels like a higher duty, your duty to the truth, however ugly it might be, and to the memory of those sacrificed? It's a profound dilemma with no easy answers.
A dilemma that resonates far beyond the specific context of 1968, I think.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of Cold War betrayal and survival as seen through this narrative framework.
Yeah, we hope breaking it down this way gave you some valuable insights, connecting the fictional suspense to the very real historical pressures of that time.
Until next time.